Good evening or morning. I have had, this is called Caffeinate Your Career. It's Caffeinate Your Career Coach. I've had a lot of caffeine today. Welcome to Caffeinate Your Career. Today's topic, cover letters. I'm your host, the career coach with the most, Jason Hopper. With me today is the jamming Jim Warner. Jim, welcome to Caffeinate Your Career.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you inviting me here today. Just by way of my background, I was an executive recruiter for 25 years. We placed medical sales, marketing, clinical people throughout the United States. We built a great team. We placed about 80 to 100 permanent placements a year with various clients around the country. And I think we did a pretty good job. I have since sold my business to one of my employees who's been with me 10 years, and he's carrying the torch. So I'm very proud of what we started and what's continuing.
That's awesome. That was it. You owned your own staffing agency.
I did.
It's amazing. That's awesome. So if you guys missed last week was Allison's last Caffeinate Your Career for the moment. She's retired officially and is looking forward to spending more time with grandkids. So we did change the format up a little bit, and we're going to have one guest host a month. So Jim was kind enough to show up here for the month of July. So we're going to see Jim all month this month. So y'all get ready. Today's topic is cover letters. I get asked about cover letters like a lot, and thought, well, why don't we just do a whole episode of, talking about cover letters? I never read a cover letter when I was a recruiter. Mm-hmm. The reason is, the cover letter is really just the story of why you want the job. And as a recruiter, I don't really care about your story. I don't. All I care about is, can you solve my problem? Right?
No, I get it.
And what's going to tell me that is the experience in your resume. I do know some recruiters that read cover letters and then they would read the resume, and I know some that would read the resume first and then read the cover letter, and then you had me that didn't read any cover letters. Did you read cover letters when you were a recruiter?
I didn't read many because many of them were way too long. I had 100. Typically I'd have about 300 emails in my inbox. So in order to get through those, you have to determine your priorities.
Right.
And if the letter is long, I'm not reading it. I'm going straight to the resume.
Yeah, same. Mm-hmm. But that was Jason the recruiter. Jason the career coach says, if there is a chance for you to write or submit a cover letter, I do recommend that you do it. It's just extra marketing for you. Whether or not it gets read doesn't really matter, right? Because when we look at job search things, I think it's always important to focus on the process versus the outcome. Because I can't control, one, if the recruiter's going to read it or even pick up the phone to call you.
Right.
All we can do is submit it, and then, we're going to hope for the best.
I agree completely. The challenge, though, with the cover letter is in many candidates' cases, is they try to reiterate their resume on that cover letter, which is a kiss of death.
Right. Well, it doesn't make any sense. It's the next document they're going to be looking at right after the cover letter. So it's like, why are you just telling me things that I'm going to be reading anyway?
Exactly. But one of the things that I think that candidates should be thinking about is that cover letter doesn't need to be an attachment on your email. That means I've got to open two attachments, your cover letter and your resume.
Oh, you think it should be like all together?
I think it should be actually in the email with the resume attached, because I may read that, but I may not click your cover letter in a document attached to your email.
That's funny, because in thinking about it, when I was looking for work or jobs, that's exactly what I did. I wrote the cover letter, or not a lot of it, in the body of the email, and then just attach my resume.
Absolutely, I think that's the best.
I think probably too, like what happens oftentimes is that candidates don't understand the purpose of the cover letter.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. It's like, hey, here's just like what it is that I do. I think instead of like reiterating what's on the resume, it's a better idea to tell me again, it's the story of why you want the job.
You're right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so tell me that story. I think that's important because everybody's reason for wanting to work at a specific company is going to be different. And that's the thing that can set you apart.
Without a doubt. And the number of candidates that I have seen that have a template that is used over and over and over again without the details associated with the job you're applying for is another FUPA.
I think it's important to tell the recruiter what job it is that you're applying for, and if you could add the job number, that would be great too.
Exactly.
I mean, you want to make it as easy as possible for the recruiter to pick up the phone and call you, right?
Yeah. Exactly. You need to stay in a role that's going to excite that manager, be a recruiter or a hiring manager, hiring authority. You need to excite them to want to open that resume, and your cover letter is the key.
Jim, how do you feel would be the best way for somebody to do that?
Now, that would mean you're asking how should we create the cover letter?
What do you think would be a good tactic for a job seeker in terms of creating a cover letter?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question.
Yeah.
Because I actually look back in some of my notes, and I believe in a 4-sentence cover letter.
Okay.
As an example, what we would want to include in that cover letter is explain why you're contacting the employer. Okay.
Right.
Number 2, provide insight on who you are and what you offer that specific employer. And 3, show enthusiasm and interest in hearing back from that employer. That's your goal.
Okay.
Yeah. You need to be specific on the name. Okay. If you have to do some research, you have to figure out who it is that you're going to be talking to, it's best to provide their name on this cover letter. Now, in lieu of not having the name, you could put Dear Hiring Team, mm-hmm. or something specific to that. I think you should never put to whom this may concern. That is.
It sounds almost like it's not spam, snail mail.
It is. And so the first sentence of your cover letter should be, I'm writing to inquire about an opening for whatever the position is that you're applying for. That's really critical.
So straightforward.
Okay. The next sentence should include the number of years of experience you have and how that experience relates to the job opening.
Okay.
Now, that could be, 1, 2, 3 sentences, but it's a small paragraph highlighting your skills to what the employer is looking for, okay, in their job description. And the 4th sentence should be, I'd welcome the opportunity to speak with you if you feel I'd be a strong candidate for the position, and here's critical, or other positions within your organization. With hiring managers very focused on their specific role, the position they're working on, they might not even think about the fact that the other recruiter down the hall has a job which would be fantastic for you.
Yeah. No, I found that to be true, even in my own career as a recruiter. Mm-hmm. I'm focused on this, and it's kind of hard to break me out of that mode, yes, and into something else. I mean, if I know it's sometimes, and this happens a lot, especially because you never know who's going to apply to things, mm-hmm, right? And so it's like, okay, I'm working on an HR generalist role, and all of a sudden I get a resume for an admin,
Right.
right?
Oh, yeah.
And so there's like, I don't oftentimes think, oh, you know what? Jim's recruiting for an admin. This would be better for him.
That's right.
And I just like, admin? No, that ain't going to work. It's a move on.
Now, this goes without saying. Spell check is absolutely critical on that resume and on this cover letter. You really do need to check your spelling.
I think yes, I do agree, but I also think it's advisable to go and read line by line and make sure that it makes sense. Because THERE and THEIR are still spelled correctly, but if you don't use it grammatically correctly, it's not going to work.
I get it, but it's also important to have a proofreader. So that would maybe a friend, it could be a spouse, it could be whoever it is. Have that friend proofread that cover letter.
Or it could be a career coach.
It could be a career coach.
And if you need help working on your cover letter or resume, give us a call at 972-437-9950, extension 379. Leave a message and somebody from the team will get back to you within 24 hours.
Excellent.
That's the commercial for the day right there.
I get it.
I think it's important. So, you were talking about not just the format of the cover letter, but how you're going to write it. And I think writing it conversationally often will give you the in terms of connecting with somebody.
Absolutely.
Everybody's big on AI and Chat GPT or Bard or whichever you want to use. And you can have it write a cover letter for you. But I don't think it doesn't sound like you. It doesn't sound like the human.
Exactly.
And I think that's kind of an important thing because they're hiring managers hire people that they like. And if you come across sounding likable in the beginning, you are, I think you're setting yourself up for success and ahead of somebody else that hasn't done that.
I agree. I agree. Now, back to spelling check just for a second. If you spell that company's name wrong, you're done.
You can't even get the name of the company right. The spelling, I think that'd be a problem.
But prior to this cover letter, research has to be taken to try to understand what the company is about.
Yeah.
What some of their gains are recently, what their growth is. Just details that you may want to include in that cover letter. Expressing the fact that you have done your research, and that's a component as well that may be put in that second paragraph.
I think too, it's important to make sure that you are conveying that the why. Like 3 years ago, I had a client and he was applying to this job at GoFundMe, and we're talking through it, and he's like, well, I don't have this skill. I was like, well, we could highlight this. And then finally I stopped him and I'm like, why do you even want to work here at this company? And he goes, well, he said, my sister-in-law had cancer, and even though she had insurance, it's kind of an expensive treatment and it doesn't cover everything. And so we set up a GoFundMe for her and people were helping out. And so I could see the value. I'm like, well, stop. He's like, what? I'm like, that's going to be your cover letter, right? Because even if the recruiter and or hiring manager doesn't remember anything else about him as the candidate, oh, he's the guy that set up our product for cancer. It's the thing that makes you memorable. And again, it's the thing that, as the story, nobody has that story.
Right.
It's personal to the candidate.
It is. But remember at the end of this cover letter, and I'm going back to the 4-sentence cover letter sample, is don't end the cover letter with yours truly or anything personal. In that regard, I think it needs to stay professional. So in that sense, sincerely or best regards would be a great ending to that.
Or is it thank you?
Or thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Right? It's like all of my emails and I will say thank you, but I say thanks more than I do anything else. You've gotten emails from me. I think thanks, Jason Hopper, right? Um, I think too, and this is so interesting, right? Because I remember, and I will see this every now and then from clients, is back in the day, right? We took in school we learned how to write letters. Remember this?
Yes.
Right? And so you'll see the date and the name of the company and the address of the company and their phone number and their fax number. Do you remember faxes?
Yes.
Does anybody have fax? Right? And then your name and contact information, and then like that's not how we write letter or even talk anymore. Like if I saw it, and I think that's right, if you put it in the body of the email.
Yeah.
But if I saw that, it takes me a minute to scroll down past all that part of the crap that's in there to get to what it is you're trying to say, and I'm probably not going to read it.
That's right.
And I think too, like when you go to address it, I think dear is not quite the right term.
Okay.
You know why? Because you don't know them. You haven't really met them. They're not dear to you, right? It's kind of how we talk, just in general. But I don't think the person is beholden to you because you don't know them.
Absolutely. I get that. I get that. However, in my example, we did use dear name or specific team or whatnot. And I think it's acceptable in certain cases.
You made a good point a minute ago, which was to find the person's name.
Yes.
How would somebody go about doing that?
Oh, my goodness. We have the tools that are available to us, one of which is something called LinkedIn.
Right? I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What?
LinkedIn can give you a wealth of information in preparation for that interview. Understanding who the hiring manager was prior to the face-to-face interview, you have the ability to understand where that hiring manager came from, how long they've worked for this particular organization, and a wealth of information. You walk in, there's an automatic bond with that hiring authority if they know you have done your research.
Yes. Well, that is, you have to.
Right.
Right?
Right. Other ways to learn that, maybe to ask the recruiter that is working with you as who you'll be interviewing with, which is an obvious. You may need to reach out to others that work within the organization to figure out, number one, if they're enjoying that company and what they can tell you about that company, and letting that individual know that you are interviewing with that company. And if that conversation through email was going well, you're asking for a recommendation of the hiring authority, and obviously somewhere along the line his name, her name.
What about if you're applying to a job? This is you're sending in your application and your resume. You're assuming it's going to go to the recruiter, but this company has at least 5 different recruiters on the team. How do you know which one to pick would be the right one?
Well, I think in that case, you wouldn't want to speculate who that recruiter was. I think that would be the time when you'd say, dear hiring team, as opposed to an individual. You disagree?
I do disagree.
Okay.
And here's why. You hit this one right on the nail, right on the head, Jim. You said, do your research, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's say I'm looking at LinkedIn and I could see there's like at least 3, maybe 4 recruiters. You don't know which one. We don't know who it's going to be, right? But we can't see their name. So even if I address the cover letter, Dear Elizabeth,
yes,
and Elizabeth's not like, this ain't my job, right? But because, my name's James, but Elizabeth does sit like 2 rows down, I can at least see that they did the research and just forward it to them.
I get it.
I think if you have at least show kind of that, and you're at least letting them know that you know something about the company. You know that Elizabeth works there as the recruiter.
No, I get that, and for the most part, so pardon me for this, but most of our clients were direct hires. They were companies that were actually going to be hiring our candidates as opposed to the recruiter per se. Okay, so that was my frame of reference.
But that's fine, Joe.
Yeah.
You can disagree with me, but that's that perspective. That's why I wanted you to be here, right? Because
Right.
and that's the other part of that though is you're dealing directly with the people. There's nobody in between.
That's right.
The LinkedIn too. You brought up a great point about LinkedIn. The other thing about LinkedIn is oftentimes they will post a job, and then it will tell you the recruiter that posted the job.
Without a doubt.
In which case, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. But like if they do, you now have access to that recruiter and can reach out to them directly, which I think is a good tactic, at least in terms of letting them know that you're interested. Again, focus on process, not the outcome. I don't know what will happen next, but if you're at least making that attempt instead of just applying or hit easy apply and move on to the next thing, you're setting yourself apart from what everybody else is doing.
I get that. Now, from wearing the recruiter hat, candidates reaching into us, if they are going to be making phone calls into me, I may not get them. I may not have the time to get to them. I do need something that will spur me to want to reach out to them. And with 100 calls a day or 60 calls a day or 50 calls a day, I don't have the time for the random candidate that's going to call me.
But let's be so when you are making those many calls a day.
Yes.
I just want to make sure we clarified. It's not that you're getting 50 calls a day. You're making 50
calls a day.
Yeah.
But I may get 5. If I get 5 random calls from candidates that they believe they will be a great fit for this role, probably not going to answer the call. I need to have something, a short cover letter like this that tells me why I should be calling them.
So then, that being the case, as the recruiter, your preferred method of contact then is straight up electronic.
Yes.
Does that include LinkedIn?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So let's reverse that though, because I'm super stoked to. I'm really so like if somebody picked up the phone and called and you're busy and on the phone and they are most likely going to have to leave a voicemail, or even if you're not on the phone at that moment, you're like, okay, I need to call this guy next, like because I understand I've been through the process, and if you're not expecting calls or you are in smile and dial mode, you're not going to stop to answer the phone.
That's right.
Right. So the candidate calling anyway is going to have to leave a voicemail. Okay. But if it's electronic, like you just said, and they reach out to you on LinkedIn, how likely are you willing to jump over to their profile, look at it, and then determine if you're going to call them back or not?
Well, again, back to the cover letter. If they give me a 4-sentence cover letter that's going to tell me why I should look at their resume, I'm going to look at their resume.
If they left a message and said, hey, Jim, thank you so much. I just applied for this job. I think I'm a great fit because XYZ. And you get around to checking it, would you then go and find their resume?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. If I have a reason to look at their resume, I'm going to look at their resume. But remember that 90% of the resumes I'm giving you a good number, 90% of the resumes we get are from people that are not qualified in least for that job.
For sure. It happens, I mean, all the time. And have you thought of why that might be? Why, like, and we just used this example earlier, me and you were talking, like, why a admin would be applying to an HR generalist role?
Well, again, they either haven't read the job description, they have these grandiose ideas they could do anything if they apply themselves. But the bottom line is, from a recruiter standpoint, we're paid to place a qualified candidate into their company, and if we don't do that, we don't get paid.
Right.
So I can't afford to take the time with the administrative person who believes they'd be a great marketer. Person just goes in the dump.
Yeah. Right. I mean, and that's something too that is something too that is interesting, and what happens oftentimes is that you will end up getting those type of resumes that don't fit, and you just don't do anything with. I mean, you're right. You can have it doesn't matter at this point what the cover letter looks like.
Right.
Because if you don't have the experience, you don't have the experience. And I think it's important to note too, because this gets really misconstrued, which is that the recruiter works for the candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the case.
It's not the case.
No.
It's not the case. But I wanted to go back to the 4-sentence cover letter and say the last sentence says, or other positions within your organization.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, if that hiring manager has a couple of extra minutes to read at the bottom of that cover letter, as short as it was, and knows that there's administrative position that's open in the company that's being handled by a different person, I might send that resume over there.
Yeah.
But if you don't give me a reason, or even something to think about at the end of that cover letter, I'm not going to think about it. I'm too focused on what I'm doing.
Right. Right. Because that's not the only job that you're recruiting for.
That's right.
Right. I mean, even when I was doing corporate, as a corporate recruiter, if I was working on one job, I was working on 10 to 12 jobs at the same time.
Right.
I think that's the other thing that people don't quite understand is it's not that this recruiter is recruiting for just one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and you being third party, you have to move fast, because if you don't, your competition is going to get the candidate and you're not, and you don't get paid.
Let me tell you one of the times it was really a standout. So a candidate wanted to talk to me, but I didn't take his calls because I just typically didn't take candidate calls unless I expected their calls.
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a candidate sent me a pen and a phone card. And he said the purpose of the pen and the phone card was to write a time in your calendar that makes sense, and the phone card to call me.
So it's not on your dime.
But that was so incredibly interesting.
I think that's a great point, and does go back to like the thing in the cover letter is, what can you do to stand out
Mm-hmm.
as a candidate?
Yes.
Did you use the phone card?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, damn right,
Yeah.
I did. He sent it. I'm going to use it.
Another, and
That's funny.
Just to move into the resume side and the interview and the post interview, one of our candidates got very creative, and what he did was he sent one shoe to the employer, and his statement within his letter with the one shoe was, now that I have one foot into this company, would you allow me this second?
That's awesome. That is a great, that's so funny, but I love it so much. Like, I think, again, trying to stand out,
Mm-hmm.
especially with, job postings getting 100, 150, 200, people applying to them. Anything that you can do to get the edge, whether it's writing that disruptive type of cover letter or sending a shoe.
Isn't that great?
That's amazing. It's just so funny, and I wouldn't have even thought about it. It's creative though,
It is.
too, right? I mean, I think it's important to keep your cover letter to one page.
Oh, less than one page. I would say you need to keep that cover letter to either a half or a third of that page.
Like fast, right?
Fast.
I mean, like nobody wants to read chunky bits of information,
No,
right?
they don't.
I think too, like it's like when I do things like post on LinkedIn, I make sure that it's like 1-2 lines, and then we hit return to go to the next thing, because again, if it's blocky, nobody's going to read it.
Nobody's going to read it.
I think that's important. Like just the visual aspect of it, because you're talking about, dude, I'm busy at time recover letter.
Right.
But if you look at it and you think, oh man, I could scan that super fast,
right,
you're more inclined to read it.
Hence, 4-sentence.
4 sentences.
Okay. Which, by the way, I am going to be handing this document to Jason. And if any of you want this sample, Jason will be happy to send it to you, I think.
Yeah, I can do it.
Right.
Yeah. He's like handing it to me right now. Jim, he's right here. And so my email is the letter J, Hopper, HOPPER, at jfsdallas.org. Put in the subject line cover letter, and I will send you that document that Jim's talking about.
Perfect.
See
that.
Excellent. Jim, what are I think we've pretty much covered this topic pretty well. Do you have any final thoughts about cover letters?
Again, I think you need to know who the company is, what they're about, and how you can help that company. It's not about that company helping you. They don't care that you're looking for a job because you need to feed your family.
Yeah.
They care about the fact that you can do something for them that they don't have presently. And so, they have a real reason to be looking at candidates, and it's not necessarily to help your family.
Right. Well, employers hire people to solve their problems.
That's right.
That's the only reason they're going to hire.
Exactly.
Everything else, and even though, we're human and, oh, I'm so sorry that that's happening to you,
right.
We can be empathetic, but at the same time, it's like, as the recruiter, I don't care. I just want to know, can you solve the problem? And if you're not conveying that very well in your cover letter, in your resume, you're not getting the call.
No, you're not. Now, keep in mind, this is, interviewing and cover letter writing is come of age. I mean, back in the day when we first started recruiting, we would send resumes via fax to the hiring.
Right. I know.
Yes. It's a very different time. It's instant.
Yeah.
Okay. But unfortunately, with the instant, all of us get tons of junk. We get some of those things we're interested in. As a hiring authority, I'm getting your resume. I mean, I get hundreds of resumes. And how do you stand out? This is important. Cover letter gives you that advantage if you do it right.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's in how you do it. And that flashback to submitting candidates and copying that first page and then whitening out the name and then all the contact information, and then faxing it, and then calling my client back. I just faxed. Did you get it? Did you get that? Did you get the call?
And the other
thing,
get
the fax?
And the other thing I got to say is that you have to you can't use the same cover letter to all companies. You can fill in the blanks and be specific and make some adjustments, but don't send the same letter out to every recruiter or hiring authority or company that you see. You need to be specific. And again, as we talked, we don't want to read a page and a half of information about you that's on your resume. We just want a quick synopsis of what you can bring to the company and how you would benefit us.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Jim, we are getting close to time. The last question that we always ask, kind of like the fun question. So what's your favorite dessert?
Oh, that's easy. Apple pie. Apple pie is my favorite dessert. I'm still eating my grandmother's apple pie that has moved down to my sister, and every year at Thanksgiving she makes just an incredible apple pie that's it. Apple pie.
Okay. I don't like a lot of sweet things. I think, as we were talking like pie, I think pumpkin pie is like the best.
Do you?
Yeah.
Awesome.
And it's also, but unlike apple pie, you can't get pumpkin pie year round.
No, you're right. You're right.
I have to wait till Thanksgiving until it comes up, and then.
Unfortunately, I sort of see pumpkin pie like liver and onions. I'm not a fan.
You're not gonna be eating the pumpkin pie.
No, I like pecan pie.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
What about you guys? Tell me, what's your favorite dessert? So Jim, you'll be back next week.
Yes,
Next
absolutely.
week we will be talking about 11 steps to prepare for the interview.
Excellent.
And we're going to be very targeted on that.
Looking
as
forward
well.
to it.
So guys, this has been Caffeinate Your Career for this week. We will see you next week with Jim. Have the best week and happy 4th of July.
Thank you.